Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Gerstenzang. I'm the board president of the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York. And this is our very own Pat O'Brien, our executive director. Thank you so very, very much for being here. And thank you to our incredible board, staff, and host committee for organizing tonight and the work you do every day. My heart is filled with so much love and appreciation for all of you. In this room tonight, we have researchers, therapists, adoptive parents, foster and kinship parents, people who were adopted or in foster care, parents who relinquished a child, educators, lawyers, artists, doctors, nurses, tech and finance people, social workers, and so many others. All of you understand the value of making sure every child has a loving, everyday parent. And that's what's bringing us all together. Each year, we like to honor an organization or a person who has contributed to the very complex work we call child welfare. Tonight, we are honoring Rita Soronen, the president and CEO of the Dave Thomas Foundation. This is one of the most influential foundations in our field, funded by the Wendy's restaurants, started by Dave Thomas, who himself was adopted. His experiences motivated him to create this fund. And tonight we have the incredible honor of having Rita here with us, all the way from Ohio, who has stewarded this fund over 30 years into an incredible movement that has influenced policy and practice across the United States, as well as recruited families for 15,000 children, and then actually supported the families. So, Rita, would you mind joining us? Pat is presenting Rita with this award, which reads, "The Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York presents this award to Rita Soronen, President and CEO of the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, in appreciation of her visionary leadership. Ms. Soronen has created change on both an individual and systemic level through her generous spirit and keen mind, benefiting thousands of children in New York State. On behalf of our entire coalition of families, we truly appreciate your partnership. So thank you so much."
Just a few words, because tonight's about the storytellers and I can't wait to hear the stories. Thank you. First, I couldn't be more honored to be among this group of folks, people that understand what we're all here for and do everything we can every day to make sure that every child feels safe and supported and every family feels supported and energized so that they can thrive as a family. That's what the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York does every day, and we're proud to support that work. I have to tell you, when I started the job I'm in now, 24 years ago, we were a very small organization, about 4 folks, and I started traveling a lot to make sure I understood what was going on across the nation so that the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption could perhaps live up to Dave Thomas's legacy and do a much better job than we were doing. And as I traveled, I can tell you this, I hope. I began to journalize my visits to hotels by taking the do not disturb signs, excuse me, and keeping them. And I've got thousands, literally thousands. But what I find is there's some creativity that goes into them. And one of the first hotels I went to in New York City, in Washington, D.C., had this incredible do not disturb sign that on one side it said, "Do not disturb the quiet little center of my universe." And on the other side, it said, "Please refresh and enliven this space." It was 2 weeks later that I was in, I don't remember where we were, but at the North American Council on Adoptable Children's conference, and I needed to meet all the leadership there, and Pat was one of the first people I met. And he told me all about what was going on at You Gotta Believe and this older youth movement. And those two things gelled in my mind that the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption had to stop what they were doing, go underground and really figure out a strategic initiative that could help those thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of children who are aging out of foster care. So for me, this is a little bit of a full circle to thank and honor Pat O'Brien and Sarah and all of you in this room that have been doing that for years in partnership, because that's what we're here to do. So I couldn't be more honored or more humbled to be here. Thank you for this, and I can't wait to hear the stories. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Harrell, and I am truly honored to be here tonight. And I cannot believe that this is our fourth uh, year of storytelling with the coalition. So I'm super excited. This
Okay,
evening means a lot to me, not
gotcha.
only as an adoptive parent, but as a writer and a
Mhm.
producer who deeply believes in the power of storytelling. Storytelling lets us step into someone else's world. When we hear their story in their own words, we begin to understand their journey in a whole new way. And let me tell you something, adoption has so many interesting and amazing stories. And each year I am blown away by the storytellers that I get to work with. And this year is certainly no different. The 6 people that you're going to hear tonight are super honest and real, and it was a privilege to get to know them. And this I always find very interesting, that whether or not you have a personal connection to adoption, I'm confident that you will find something in each story tonight that really speaks to you. And before we start, I'd like to say that we're dedicating tonight's show to Alicia Murray, who recently passed. Alicia was a cherished family support specialist with the Coalition's Wendy's Wonderful Kids team. She was adopted at the age of 10, and she was in last year's show. We are very grateful that her story, The Greatest Gift I Ever Received, lives on, and you can find it on the Coalition's website. So with that, now it's time for tonight's stories. The first one is from Mikey Williams. He is a family support specialist for the Coalition in Hudson Valley, and his story is about becoming a father and the lessons he learned in order to make that happen. So here's Mikey with Delayed Doesn't Mean Denied. Yes.
Good evening, everybody. How are you guys doing? All right, come on. Let's get there. All right, good. Barbara, thank you. Pat, thank you. He asked me, he emailed me, he said, would you like to be a part of this? And I said, of course, I always want to use my voice. And he said, a challenge that you're having, that you face. And I said, oftentimes we tell the stories when we have our kids and what's going through, but nobody knew the before story. So mine is the before story. I always wanted to be a father and knew that children were my future. By my late 20s, I was ready to start the journey, but as a young single male, gay, color, living in the city, it felt damn near impossible. Who has $50,000 or more to pay for a surrogate? I knew I didn't, and I still don't. So I went to an adoption agency in New York City called the Council of Adoption Children, which was formerly known as COAC, which helped recruit prospective foster and adoptive parents. I was excited, ready for answers. But 45 minutes into the orientation meeting, I realized this was a dead end. Who wants to foster a child only to have them removed at any moment? I knew I didn't. In that moment, I felt my rope getting shorter. At this point, I had been on a fatherhood path for about a year. I remember posting on Facebook that I wanted to be a dad. People commenting things like, one day, you'll make a great dad, praying for you, sure, all nice and positive, but not really helpful, not what I was really looking for. I felt sorry for myself. I might have cried a little. Then I thought, Mikey, it's not just about getting what you want. It's about becoming the person who can handle it when it comes. Delay can mean redirection, not rejection. I took a hard look at my life. My finances were a mess. I was always out trying to be the life of the party. My priorities were all over the place. I had unhealed trauma, broken relationships that needed mending. The truth was, I wasn't the kind of dad that I wanted to be. Not every setback is a stop sign. Some delays help you reevaluate, make better choices. They build character, maturity, and readiness. Growth is a beautiful thing. 10 years later, at 37, I was wiser. And that deep urge of I wanted to be a parent came roaring back to life. One June night, scrolling Instagram, I saw a post from Gays with Kids Academy. They featured a gay couple who had adopted an older child through You Gotta Believe, an organization that finds forever home for older youth in foster care. Jackpot. I sent the DM. 3 weeks later, I was taking their 10-week mapping training course. Soon after that, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. I got licensed. I completed my home study, and I was approved, y'all. The adoption process is full of agencies, legal steps, and government red tape. It is easy to internalize these delays and think you're unworthy, but the truth is the system is slow, bureaucratic, and complicated. Then COVID hit. Life stopped, and I thought to myself, here we go again. So close to my dreams, and now everything is on hold. The world was worried about staying healthy, and the hope of me becoming a dad felt small and invisible. I wanted to quit. But then I reminded myself, you're already ahead of the pack. This is just a delay. Success isn't about talent or luck, it's often about persistence. So while I waited, I prepared. I researched schools, found a pediatrician through neighborhood friends, looked into after school programs and community resources. Most importantly, I leaned on my faith, spiritually and emotionally. All of this helped carry me through uh, quietly through the waiting, building strength and momentum before things went big, and they went big. A month later, my social worker called. I had been matched with an 8-year-old boy. We met in August. By Veterans Day, November 11th, he had moved in, all the way from Massachusetts to New York. Everything I had asked God for was now snuggled up right next to me on the couch, laughing, eating pizza, watching Ant-Man and Spider-Man, Homecoming, my son. The smiling face on my son is the absolute highlight of my new life. Not long after, I was walking to work listening to Bishop T.D. Jakes. If anybody knows, he's a great TV pastor, a big guy. And I was listening to his sermon through my AirPod. And he said, delayed doesn't mean denied. And I said, wow, this is the story of my life. Not, it stopped me dead in my tracks. Didn't he just say what I thought he said? Delay doesn't mean deny. This was my story, my parenting journey in 5 words. Delays aren't punishment, they are preparation for something stronger and more lasting. Looking back, I see I became the dad at exactly the right time in my 20s and early 30s. I wasn't ready. Now I was. Today, I'm a proud father of 2 boys, 125 and 113. I never imagined my life's bingo card had a free space for another child, let alone a young adult. My youngest has been with me for 5 years now, and my oldest, he chose me. He asked me to be his dad. This time I didn't have to scramble to get ready. The preparation was already done. Delay does not mean denied. It's just a phrase. It's a mindset. Stay the course, stay grounded, and keep showing up. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Oh my God. Chills. Okay. Next up is Jordan Bates. Jordan is currently a foster parent and soon to be an adoptive mom. Her story is about raising children, more specifically teens. So I'm sure a lot of us know that particular joy. Now, please welcome Jordan to the stage with her story, Hard is Not the Same as Bad.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to share our story. And heads up, there is no way I'm going to make it through this without crying, especially after already crying listening to Mikey's. So if my voice shakes, it's my tears of mostly happiness. People often ask how my husband and I became foster parents to a teenager. As a little girl, I remember learning about adoption and being intrigued by the idea that people could take care of children who needed families. That thought never really left me. At different points in my life, I pictured myself being a mom to 4 kids, 2 adopted and 2 biological. When I met my husband, Seb, I asked on our first date if he wanted to have children. He said that he thought he did, but he didn't necessarily feel the need or desire to have biological children. I was intrigued again. 8 years later, after getting married and a lot of soul-searching, conversations, and couples therapy, thinking about whether, when, and how to expand our family, we decided that becoming foster parents was the path to parenting that we both wanted. We never tried to conceive. As I often tell our daughter, foster parenting was our first choice. But let me say, we had no illusions about how hard being foster parents would be, particularly to older children, which is who we decided we would focus on. And to be honest, it's been every bit as hard as we imagined. But as a friend of mine says, hard is not the same as bad. That reminder carried us through the early months when we didn't have older children right away. The first child we cared for was 18 months old, and he came just for the weekend. 2 weeks later, he was still with us, and he returned several times for respite care with his siblings. After that, the pace of things was unpredictable. Some weeks, we didn't get a single call from our home finder. Other weeks, we got calls daily. We said yes several times, but those children were placed elsewhere. We also said no for the first time, and our home finder reminded us your no's are as important as your yeses. These experiences, the waiting, the uncertainty, the quick hellos and goodbyes, they were all hard and preparing us in many ways, and not at all, for what was to come. On November 9th, 2023, we got a call. Our home finder told us she had a teenager who she thought might be a good fit. Her name is Pingle, she's told us. I let my daughter choose her pseudonym for this story. Pingle is not her real name. She's turning 15 in 2 weeks. She's absolutely beautiful, but she has a very goth style. Heavy eyeliner, fishnet stockings under her shorts, and she listens to metal music. She's smart, reflective, and an amazing artist. It was the fastest yes that Seb and I had given. This was the picture we'd carried in our minds. Being there for a teenager who needed people willing to understand and accept her, encourage her self-expression, give her support and opportunities, and believe in her. I asked what kind of pizza she liked. I put out fresh towels and made a little welcome sign for her room. A few hours later, she arrived. Pingle's favorite part of this story is that Seb came out to the street in bare feet to help her carry in her things. What struck me most was how small and young she seemed. Her curly hair hung in her face. She apologized for not being comfortable making eye contact. I wasn't entirely comfortable either, nervous and excited all at once. But like most, if not all parents, I loved her immediately. After the caseworker left, we asked Pingle what she wanted to do. She said, I think we should eat dinner together and get to know each other. At the table, she took off her oversized sweatshirt, revealing a Rob Zombie t-shirt. Cool t-shirt, Seb said. Not only is Seb a Rob Zombie fan himself, but the year before we had gone dressed as Rob Zombie and his wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, for Halloween. It felt meant to be. And if that wasn't enough of a sign, the next morning, Pingle and Seb both came out wearing Black Sabbath t-shirts. For the non-metal fans, I hear there are people laughing, so some people understand what they should be picturing. Black Sabbath was Ozzy Osbourne's band, and Ozzy Osbourne was known as the Prince of Darkness. So I imagine that people walking past us in the American Dream Mall that day wondered how I, a 40-year-old Taylor Swift fan, saw the movie this past weekend, fit into this picture. But I loved it. This was even better than I'd imagined. Now, They say there's a honeymoon in foster care, a honeymoon phase in foster care. Usually that refers to the child being on their best behavior and then slowly letting down their walls once they feel safe. But in our family, the honeymoon phase applied to me also. At first, I was the kind of parent I had hoped to be. I was calm and steady when boundaries were tested, warm and supportive, understanding of big emotions and the need for space, and I didn't take things personally. Pingle opened up to me. I cherished our drives to and from school, or evenings when she'd sit on our bed and play with the dogs, quiet moments when she would share snippets of what was on her mind. I felt so privileged to be trusted. It's difficult to put words to the end of our honeymoon phase, but let's just say it wasn't pretty. One afternoon, after an orthodontist appointment where there was a heavy dose of teenage attitude, we got into the car and Pingle went to turn on her music. And I said, no, we're listening to mine. She argued, and I blasted Taylor Swift. She reached over and turned it down. I lost it. I snatched her phone off the console between us. If she wasn't respecting me, I told myself she wouldn't have access to this privilege that I'm giving her. Pro parenting tip. Snatching away a teen's cell phone is not the way to go. I have not snatched her phone again since, but I have tried cutting off the Verizon service and our Wi-Fi a few times. Things got harder and harder from there. A downward spiral of me trying to take control and losing my mind in the process. I was pulled in two directions. Some people said, she just needs clear limits. Others told me she just needs someone to understand, as if I wasn't desperately trying to do both. That's when I found the Coalition's Saturday morning support group. At 8:30 a.m. once a week, they became my life preserver in the choppy waters of foster care. In the moments when I felt like a failure, questioning whether I was even parenting at all, Chester and Danielle reminded me, what makes you a parent is your commitment. That's all parenting is, commitment. I had imagined what commitment would look like: cooking dinner, helping with homework, setting limits, of course, family movie nights, things like that. With older foster youth, you know that so many of their childhood milestones have already passed, and you expect parenting's going to look different. But to give you a sense of how different it looks, Pingle and I have only ever done homework together one time. And we've watched maybe 2 movies all the way through. But there are lots of milestones on the horizon, like learning to drive, she's 16, almost 17, and applying to her first job. There are milestones in this that are unique to foster care, like celebrating her birthday alongside her biological family and telling her the news that we have an adoption date. It happens to be next Thursday, which is why I'm crying so much. Some milestones seem so ordinary, but they're deeply meaningful. Like the time Pingle finally asked to try my pad thai after I'd offered her bites of my dishes hundreds of times. And some milestones are extra special. Like at the end of this summer, when we took Pingle and a friend to see the heavy metal bands Korn and System of a Down. As a teenager, I would have been terrified of a concert like that, imagining the stereotypes of angry rockers with spiked hair and chains and mosh pits. But as the lights flashed and the stadium vibrated with drums, guitars, and screams, I looked over at Pingle, fist in the air, recording on her iPhone, singing at the top of her lungs. I put my hand on Seb's knee and I leaned my head on his shoulder. And in that moment, I felt all of it: the sadness, rage, and loneliness of foster care and foster parenting, but also the community, the resilience, the heart, the advocacy, the justice, and the love. It's hard, but hard is not the same as bad. Thank you. Oh my God. Beautiful. Oh.
Wow. Next up is Katie Doyle Bunker. And yes, Katie is a former, oh, my Long Island is coming out, my former foster mom, and an adoptive mom of 2. She's also a family support specialist for the Hudson Valley team. Yay, team. Tonight, we'll hear how Katie uses the parenting tools she teaches to others to help herself become a better mom. So here's Katie with Pace Yourself.
Good evening. I wanted to start by thanking Pat and Sarah and the rest of the board of directors who afford me the opportunity to serve the families in the Hudson Valley. It is the greatest honor and privilege to be one of the first person that someone calls when everything is bad and they just need someone who will listen. So thank you. I am a child of the 70s. I grew up on a steady diet of reruns of Bewitched, and I Dream of Jeannie, The Brady Bunch, Gilligan's Island, and of course, Little House on the Prairie. I grew up wanting to be just like my mom and my grandmother because they were the most amazing women I knew in real life. More than anything, I wanted to be the best mom in the world and have a double oven like Carol Brady. I met my husband on the first day of college in my freshman year. By December, we were talking about getting married and wanting to have a family. After college, we did get married. I was 25 and thought, this is it, we're ready. Unfortunately, I wasn't ready for the disappointment, the heartache, the loss, and the frustration that infertility would bring in the next 13 years of our lives. As we navigated through the many doctor's appointments, procedures, and pokings, I kept thinking, I'd get pregnant if I just made a list of the wonderful things I'm going to do for my children to make sure their childhood was filled with magic and joy and love. Or if I just tried a little harder, read another book about parenting, or surely if I perfected my recipe for chocolate chip cookies, it would happen for me. It did not. Finally, we reached our line in the sand, the point we knew that we could go no further. We walked out of that doctor's appointment in silence, fully aware that we had shut the door and thrown away the key. We took a break. A year to throw away the schedules and the calendars and the ovulation predictors. But the ache didn't stop. We knew we wanted to have a family. We also knew that we never wanted a child to feel like a consolation prize for our inability to birth a family. What we wanted for them was to know that when life presented us with a fork in the road, we wholeheartedly chose the path to become foster parents. So we went through the county process, the packet, the MAP classes, the letters from friends and families, and prepared for the arrival of a child. The first call came, and 20 months later, the second call came, and we gladly answered yes. Soon we were caring for 2 children under 3, working full-time and living happily for the most part, but we were exhausted. That's when we learned that each child was going to need a permanent home. And we were honored to be that place for them. That's when our home team was formed. It was around this time I joined AFFCNY as a family support specialist. And a few short months later, I found myself sitting in a classroom in Brooklyn, learning about reframing parenting. Very briefly, reframing parenting teaches ways to nurture connections with children, built around PACE, which stands for playful, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. A very special thanks to Pat and Sarah for that training. I'll never forget the experience of that training. The introduction to reframing has become the steady background hum of my life. As a family support specialist, I get to facilitate reframing sessions several times a year, and I get to collaborate with the Pace Yourself presentation, which is every other week. But more than anything, returning to this material again and again and again helps me to inch closer to being the parent I truly want to be. By talking about reframing so often, it has become second nature, as natural as where I put my keys when I walk in the front door. On days when I can't tell if the cyclone of emotions is teen years, hormones, or trauma, I remind myself that choosing connection over control of the situation is the foundation of our family. I do do-overs. I say I'm sorry. And I ask myself if this is really the hill I want to die on. No matter what, if a child has just spent an hour arguing with me and still asks for a hug, they get one. Our relationship always comes first, and we'll figure out the rest later. Reframing has grown with us. From playful games like Spider-Man Says, which is a lot like Simon Says, but way cooler, to the made-up conversations I used to open the door to hard topics. It reminds me to practice mind mindfulness, like inviting a child to ride with me to the grocery store, knowing that the confessional quiet of the car can sometimes open spaces for bigger conversations. I've learned that much of reframing isn't about the heat of the moment, but how I think of our relationship when things are calm. It's letting my kids know that my husband and I are their biggest fans, and no subject is off limits, and that I don't need to RSVP to every argument I'm invited to. Sometimes waiting a day before addressing the consequence is the best choice. I am deeply grateful to AFFCNY, not just for the chance to support other families, but for teaching me that being a good mom is less about perfection and more about building strong relationships day by day. And as I like to say when I'm facilitating, intersubjectivity, find out what it means to me. Intersubjectivity. A lot of apologies to Aretha Franklin. What does it mean? It means being able to influence our kids and be influenced by our kids. So who did I turn out as a mom? Some days I hope I'm a little like my grandmother, who opened her home with warmth and turned her pain into strength for others. I hope I'm a little like my mom. Oh, I hope I'm a little like my grandmother, who opened her home with warmth and turned her pain into strength for others. I hope I'm like my mom, a fierce advocate who gives love and compassion in quiet ways and always notices people so they feel seen. I hope I'm like my sister who practices radical acceptance and reminds me to let go a little bit more as my kids grow. It's a little hard. I hope I carry pieces of the friends and loved ones who have shaped me along the way. But my favorite part of being a mom will always be the mornings when everyone dog piles into my bed, snugly, safe, full of love and giggles, watching the Addams Family. I never did get the double ovens, but I got a lot more than I ever hoped for.
Wow, that was just beautiful. Um, Ellen Early is also a family support specialist for the coalition. And Ellen has seen many, many sides of adoption. And she is here to tell us all about it with her amazing story called Adoption Expert. Ellen? Oh, there's the little bag.
Expert might be pushing it, but I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for asking me to do this. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I was adopted when I was 5 months old out of the foster care system through Catholic Charities. It was a typical closed 1973 adoption. My parents were wonderful and no complaints from me. I don't know if they might have had a few. Part of being adopted is never being biologically related to your family. And that was kind of a brain twist for me because I actually looked like I could be my parents' daughter. I had my dad's curly hair and I had my mom's eyes. And when I was out with my dad, people would say how much I looked like him, and he would thank them and wink at me. And when I was out with my mom, she'd say, "Isn't that neat? Because she's adopted." And that was part of our story. It was something that she was proud of and something she never wanted me to feel ashamed of, and I never did. When I was 21, I became pregnant, and I remember making the conscious decision to keep this baby. It was an option not to at the time. and I started imagining what our life would look like. Being an adopted person and being pregnant was surreal. My mom didn't have any when I was pregnant with you stories. She couldn't share that with me. I didn't really even believe I was pregnant until that first sonogram when I was 5 months. And even then, it was really hard to connect those fluttery movements inside me with the overwhelming love I was feeling, that was actually a baby. It didn't really compute. I had always felt like I had just kind of dropped out of the sky into my adoptive family, kind of like Mork from Mork and Mindy. Katie would remember that one. And now here I was about to give birth to my own baby. She came 10 days past her due date, 9 pounds even, with long fingers and green eyes, and I named her Sage. And she was perfect, and I was terrified. I didn't want to put her down, and I didn't want to let her out of my sight, not even let anybody else hold her. She fascinated me. We had the same eyes and the same smile, the same everything. She was the first person in my life I knew who I was related to. And when she grew up, strangers would sometimes ask if we were sisters. When Sage turned 5 months old, I couldn't help but think I had no idea where I had been in those first 5 months of my life. Did I have a name? How could anyone have given me up? Because I couldn't even bear to leave Sage's side, not even while she napped. I thought about my birth mom and what was happening in her life that had made her feel she couldn't keep me. Was she more afraid of keeping me than letting me go? I thought about my mom, too. Was she worried about that something might be wrong with me that she didn't know because she hadn't known me for those first 5 months? Even now, it's hard to reconcile that someone loved me enough to give me away and someone loved me enough to keep me. Thankfully, Sage didn't have to struggle with that particular pain. She had her own struggles, though, as a teenager, and we got her help. And when she was about 20, she asked to come home because she was pregnant, and she knew my home was safe. Of course, I welcomed her with open arms, and I knew how hard being a young mother was, so I was determined to support her so she didn't feel alone or scared. I'll never forget the night that my grandson was born. Sage kept saying that she was uncomfortable and she was having cramping and her back hurt. And I thought, sure, yeah, let's get the Barcalounger. That should definitely help if you can lay back for a while. And so we banged it down from upstairs, her brother and I. And it didn't help, of course, because little did we know she was actually in labor. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, we were driving to the hospital and she was literally doing an exorcist move over the front seat as I'm holding her hand and saying, "You're doing a great job. Just keep breathing." And I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should run the red lights, that this looks kind of scary. Then I thought, no, it can't be that bad. I had all 3 babies. I was in the hospital, hooked up to machines, and it was 2 weeks overdue. And she was 2 weeks early. So no way was she going to be having this baby. So obviously I'm not a doctor. When we arrived at the hospital about 45 minutes later, she had 6 pushes and my grandson was born, and I cut the cord. I have never been so amazed by Sage, and I watched her do plenty of amazing things: being born, taking her first steps, riding a bike, driving a car, but the way she gave birth to her son will forever top the list. And she was incredible in those early months. I worried about postpartum depression, but she was in her element. She and her son were bonded like 2 peas in a pod. When he was about 17 months old, Sage had her wisdom teeth removed. She had had a lot of infection and pain, but she put it off because she was exclusively breastfeeding and she didn't want to put anything in her body that would hurt her child. But at that point, they said, "It's okay, go ahead." She had all 4 wisdom teeth removed. The oral surgeon prescribed her oxycodone, and that was the beginning of her addiction. She left her son in my care, and I immediately got custody because I needed to bring him to doctor's appointments and other things like that. And I thought, I was just filling in until she felt better, until she got better. And she did get better. She did about almost a year, did a rehab program. And within that year, she called, FaceTimed with her son every night, singing songs and reading books. And then she came home. And again, they were just 2 peas in a pod. It was like nothing had come between them ever. But about a month after she came home, she went to a friend's funeral. And she didn't come home that night. I texted her that we loved her, and when she was ready, we were there. And at 10 p.m. on Sunday, September 16th, the police came to my door and gave me the news that no parent wants to hear. Sage was gone. That night was the beginning of my kinship journey. Since then, I've done everything I believed Sage would have done for her son. Preschool, after-school activities, being involved in the community. Some things I know she would not have done, like fast food and video games, but I'm still a Nana. My grandson finds pennies all the time, and we know that they're from Mama. We talk about her and we talk to her. To him, she is his angel. Every milestone is bittersweet because she should have been there. I am my grandson's parent. I stepped in when my daughter couldn't. It's not how I envisioned being a Nana, but I'm grateful, and I've been able to give him love, consistency, and a home for his entire life. The grief and loss and adoption is amplified in kinship. Kinship parents don't prepare for this. We don't save money or buy bigger homes in anticipation of raising our children's children. We do it out of pure love, often in the face of resentment, misunderstanding, anger, and with zero support from the system. But we also carry the wisdom of parenting a second time around. More patience, more perspective, and more understanding. I fell into my role at the coalition just 8 months after Sage passed. My grandmother always told me I was lucky, but I know this was purely Sage. I am now surrounded by people daily who get it, who walk the walk. When the coalition says family is the most important thing, they mean it with their whole heart. I've learned a new way to parent a child who's experienced the greatest loss possible. And I've been listened to, encouraged, and understood from my own adoption experience to kinship parenting. And I now get to work with the experts, myself included, because the experts are the people who live and love in families that are created differently. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Regina Calcaterra is not only a storyteller tonight, and also, right, isn't she have something over there in our fabulous, oh, her books and meetings? You can sign up for that, bid on that, our silent auction. Very exciting. So she's also an international New York Times best-selling author. Yeah, wow. Head on over there afterwards. And she is here to tell us about her journey, in the foster care system and the people outside of that system who believed in her and helped her along the way. So here is Regina with Making Packs. Very well.
So as far as the auction item, this is the very first time I've actually auctioned myself off. So it's not for any dating or anything crazy like that. But since I do a lot of public speaking, if you have a school or a not-for-profit or a book club that you would like me to appear within the New York City region, I will happily do it if you bid on it. Some great money is going to go to this fantastic organization. But the reason why I'm here, very honestly, is because I have known Pat O'Brien, I don't know, 20 years, 2005, yeah. And you can't say no to him. Not for that. And if you do, you better run really fast. So, so that's what brings me here, and a great respect for Pat and all the great work that he's done. So, my four siblings and I grew up in and out of foster homes, homeless shelters, and on the streets of Long Island. We were born to a woman who had 5 kids by 5 different men. Clearly, this woman couldn't take care of herself with 5 children that she had. And my mother was bipolar, but she wasn't diagnosed back in the 1960s and 70s. So people who had mental illness, unfortunately, use alcohol and drugs to try to self-medicate themselves. So what she would ultimately do is just go with these benders, and for weeks at a time. And when she was gone, we were on our own, and that was our happiest time. But we also had to figure out how to eat, how to stay warm, and how to survive. So we did things like going to the beach, and we would dig dig for clams and mussels and crab for once in a while. We didn't dig, we would just catch them. We would steal vegetables from farms at nighttime. We would take our dog Pepper and we'd let him out and act as if like we were going to try to save him while the rest of the siblings would go down on the ground, do the belly shuffle, grab as many vegetables as possible and trying to scam and trying to run from there. But we also had staged grocery store heists. Literally, we had a lookout and a bunch of other siblings there that we were stealing food while we also had to look out to make sure that we weren't going to get busted. But we also scavenged clothes from dumpsters and hid out in libraries as they were temperature controlled, and we had clean running water and operating bathrooms. Just think about that. As a kid who's living on the streets or even living in poverty, you're not in a warm environment. Your bathroom usually don't work and the water isn't clean. So we would try to find areas at places like that, and places was a library. But our biggest fear wasn't hunger. It wasn't cold either, being cold. It was being separated into different foster homes. After a foster home that terrorized us, as there were not background checks back in the early 1970s, my siblings and I made a pact that no one would ever know how we were really living. We made up cover stories for our teachers, for neighbors, for caseworkers, for anyone who might call Child Protective Services. So we always had an explanation of where our mother was. When someone came knocking on the door, if they asked for her at nighttime, we say, oh, she's a barmaid. That's what it was called back then. And if they asked where she was in the afternoon, we said she was working at the real estate company. When we asked where she was, if they were knocking on the door at 7 a.m, we said, oh, she's working in the deli, peeling carrots. And if someone knocked on the door at 3 a.m, like to do. She said, well, she worked for a bakery, and so she was delivering bagels. These are all jobs that she had, and she would take us with her. So we knew how it was, to explain the jobs that she actually had. But this is how we tried to try to prevent them from tearing us apart. So we made a pact, and that pact actually lasted for 7 years on our own, with our mother bailing around. But we also knew that the longer the pact lasted, the more danger we were. Just before I turned 14, literally just a few days, my mother brutally beat me, and my body at that point was emaciated, so it wasn't able to absorb the scars and the bruises, and wasn't able to hide them. So when my caseworker came by, because someone obviously called them, she literally told me that if I don't tell her the truth about what is going on, I won't survive, and neither will my siblings who I was raising on my own. Just the thought of actually me dying was fearful, and I knew that we were getting close to there. But she made a promise to us. She said, if you tell me the truth, you're just a few days away from your birthday. So once you turn 14, you can emancipate yourself from your parents. Not only that, you can argue to the court that the court should take away custody of your younger siblings, and they can be adopted. And the thought of them actually being adopted into a home, and for them finally being loved and safe, the way that they should be, is what caused me to break with the pact. So I told the caseworker everything that they ever knew for the first 14 years of my life. The very next day, I got off the bus and I saw the worst thing I could ever see, or any child who has siblings in and out of foster homes could ever see in their driveway. There were 2 cars. One of them took my older sister Camille and I to one foster home, and the other one took Rosie and we went to 2 separate ones. Shortly after that, I met the caseworker, David, at the age of 14. David, to the court to let the court know what was going on. When my mother found out that I was trying to take away her rights over me and take her siblings, she went to go visit them for a Christmas visit. and she never returned them. She literally kidnapped them and brought them all the way to Idaho because she was fearful she was going to lose her welfare checks, because each one of us was a welfare check to her. So once that happened, social services didn't do anything to help us at all to try to track them down. A few months later, my caseworker told me I was emancipated. So she said, so now we're going to start independent living training, which is, you know, that's a 17-point checklist back then. And I said, well, what do you mean I'm going to be on my own when I'm 18? Why do I need to learn this? And she said, well, because you're going to be on your own once you turn 18. And I said, well, won't someone want to adopt me? Because I'm freed for adoption. And she said, nope, people don't adopt foster kids, especially older foster kids. Can you imagine at the age of 14 being told for the rest of your life you will never have a safety net? You will never have an adult in your life that cares about you. So nevertheless, I listened to what she was saying. I was taking the independent living training. It included how to go food shopping with money. So a few years after that, I told my foster parents and I told my caseworker that I was going to go to college. And they told me, well, you're not going to college because foster kids don't go to college. But what they didn't know is that there was yet another pact in my life, is I had an English teacher, a social study teacher, and a counselor that actually put together their own pact to get me into college, because they said the only way I will be in control of my destiny is if I get an education and then I'm smart enough. They helped me fill out the test, figure out how to pay for things, how to do applications. They're the ones that ultimately got me in college and built up my self-esteem and my confidence to be able to harness the resources that were out there. Not my foster home, not the caseworker, but these were the kind touches along the way that got me there. So after working 3 jobs at once while while going to college, I made it almost fully through, except in my last year of college, I aged out. And when I went to college, I made a pact for myself that I'm going to graduate college regardless of how difficult it was. So I wasn't going to give up once I aged out, once I didn't get the additional money. I didn't know how to pay rent. I didn't have food to eat. But I knew I was going to graduate college. And then 6 months after that, I graduated from SUNY New Paltz. Fast forwarding, thank you. Fast forwarding, I decided I was going to go to law school. I was working full-time during the day for 4 years. I went to law school at nighttime. Who's ever done that? That is, between like 6 to 10 at nighttime for 4 years, which is pretty miserable. And I remember when I passed the bar, I got that thin envelope that says you've passed the bar, as opposed to that thick envelope. And I realized for the very first time, for the rest of my life, I will only have one job. So I never planned on doing anything within the child welfare realm. I didn't want to live in that world. I didn't want to work from it. And but somewhere around maybe November and December 2005, there was an article in the Times on the city section under the fold, but half of that page was about an organization called You Gotta Believe that actually worked to find older youth permanency. I couldn't believe that there's an organization like that, because I was told that was not adoptable. So I called up Pat. I wouldn't leave him alone. I started following this. I had to be interested for a year to be on the board, right? I had to go to all the different events. And my goal with joining You Gotta Believe was actually to give people a different perception about foster kids, as opposed to the criminals on like certain SVU, types of movies that we were the criminals, as opposed to we were just kids who were looking for a parent. So after joining You Gotta Believe, I wanted to do whatever I possibly could to raise awareness about the plight of older foster children. And then in 2013, I wrote my memoir, talked about You Gotta Be and the plight of older foster youth. It became a New York Times bestseller. So I pretty much made sure I definitely raised that way. So after doing that, 1 year afterwards, after booking a year afterwards, I by the way, talking about You Gotta Believe, Pat O'Brien is the founder of You Gotta Believe. For those of you who don't hear, that the gentleman I can't say no to him. Okay. So 1 year afterwards, I went to an event that You Gotta Believe was and they were having some of their older youth to come before audiences, prospective parents to tell their story. And I knew most of the youth that were there. But there was this first young woman that I've never seen before. She gets up before everyone, says her name is Brazil. She has a 3.5 GPA. She's a full scholarship for college. She's a home health aide, and she is fluent in ASL. But she was kicked out of her foster home because she was turned 21. And I looked around and started telling people that You Gotta Believe. She's a me. But I wasn't there to adopt her. I wasn't there to adopt anybody. But when I met her, I realized how fragile she was, how much she could actually either fail or succeed, because she was living in this fine line and she was living in her boyfriend's family's home, but she wasn't safe to necessarily be there. That wasn't what her space was. So what I did, because there were plenty of parents who were interested in parenting her, and she specifically had what she wanted in her head as a family. She wanted a mom and a dad, 2 older siblings, and a dog. So it wasn't part of my plan anyway, and I certainly didn't make those. But my concern is that I need to keep her close. I need to mentor her and make sure she makes the right decision. So I invited her to my home on the east end area called Southold, and said, you can stay here, you've got to work. Have the parents come and meet you, here at your, at my home. So at least she had the safe space. So as she was doing this, going through the process, she was finding parents that kind of fit the whole, the mom and dad, the 2 dogs, the two little siblings and the dog, actually. But at the end of the summer, she asked me to be her forever mom. And at that point, we're going to pack together that we're going to break the cycle with her. Like this cycle is going to stop with Brazanne. Fast forwarding. She graduated college. She got her master's of social work from CUNY Hunter. She's now licensed. She's married. She has 2 beautiful babies that are, I'm a grandparent, but I'm also their Gigi. And we together, with the pact that we made to make sure that we were going to break the cycle, we did it together. Thank you.
I'll run over there and bid if I were you. All right, our last storyteller of the evening is Lyra Brooks. She is a mom of 5 grown children and also a soon-to-be adoptive mom to a little boy. Her story is about what happens when you put aside your fears to build relationships with the people in your child's life. Now, here's Lyra with We Are One.
Good evening, everyone. In most Marvel superhero movies, things go from bad to good. The world is in a state of not right, and by the end, the world is safe again. A happy ending. That's how it is in most superhero shows. That was what I was hoping for when my phone rang one night 5 years ago. It was the height of the COVID epidemic. I was asked if I could mass up and drive a few hours to meet an 8-year-old boy. I didn't know then that he would become such an important part of my family. He greeted me. He was in a facility, so he greeted me in this Hulk costume and full of character about superheroes, video games, technology. I mean, he was just all over the place. But what he didn't know was, as a fellow Marvel super fan, because that's what I am, okay? I lit up, we laughed, and we compared our favorites. Then suddenly, his head went down, and this little voice said, "Now I have to tell you not the not so good stuff." The Hulk told me his story. It was not a good story. The world was not right. Lots of bad guys. My heart immediately said, "Help him." So he came to live with me. I told him when he came in the house, I walked him through, meet the house, and I told him, "This is your home. You are the prince of this castle, and here you will be safe." We were building our own kind of superhero team. Then came the plot twist in our story, the search for his biological mother. As part of the fostering process, the judge ordered that his biological mother be found for the next court hearing. Shortly after, the agency I was working with called me, urging me, "Just talk to the mother. You'll like her. Give her a chance." I was willing, but felt fiercely protective of my prince. During our first call, I was careful and asked a lot of questions. Then suddenly, the mama bear in me kicked in, and I just blurted out, "I just want to know, are you in this for the long haul or just a court check-in?" Things got real silent. Then her voice got steady and sincere. "I'm here forever. That's my kid. I love him and I want to be in his life." That was the moment, that moment was the beginning of something beautiful. Because in that moment, together, we, the foster mother, the bio mother, embarked on creating a life for our child. Okay? According to Google's dictionary, the word foster means to encourage, to promote the development of something, typically something regarded as good. Can I repeat that? Let me repeat. Foster means to encourage, to promote the development of something, typically something regarded as good. And that was what we were doing. The next court date, I advocated to the judge about allowing the parent and child visits in the community, in my community, and some in Brooklyn where she lived. We also got permission for Mom to attend all his boys' clubs and camp activities, including Saturday basketball games. One of our boys' greatest loves was Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic has superhero speed and battles the evil Dr. Robotic, in case you didn't know, okay? So one morning, after putting him on the school bus, his mother and I teamed up for a surprise to transform his bedroom into a Sonic paradise. We had breakfast together at my house, then headed to Home Depot to choose the perfect shade of Sonic blue. Back home, we changed into our painting clothes, stripped the room, and went to work. We painted, we designed, we did touch-ups, we laughed, and we shared lunch. By the afternoon, we were hanging new Sonic curtains, fluffing pillows, in search of Sonic bedding, laying down a Sonic rug, and hanging up Sonic wall art. It truly was a Sonic explosion. Then when he returned home from school, he walked into his room and his face instantly lit up. "Mommy, I love you," he screamed. And then to me, Miss Brooks, why didn't you tell me? And his joy was priceless. That evening, the three of us cooked and ate dinner together as a family. We all know that life isn't a superhero movie, but this one moment for this little boy sure felt like it. That day was the start of a relationship built not on rivalry, but on unity and love. His mother and I continued to strengthen our bond as we raised our son together, as we raised him together. Soon I will officially adopt this prince of the house. He once asked me, "What should I call you?" Well, I said, "Your mommy will always be your mommy." Then he asked, "Can I call you grandma like the other grandchildren do?" And my answer to that was a simple yes. I will be grandma forever because in the end, we are one. We are one. And something like, I just want to say something. I got a phone call today. So the adoption is just around the corner. Like it's here. Like the one thing they were looking for, and we've got a date. So it's happening, and I'm ecstatic. And that was the phone call I got today. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my
Thank you.
goodness. So I just want to invite all of our storytellers up. And thank you so much for being here. They are incredible. Everybody come up. There you go.
Did we get it? Did we get that? Got the shot. Thank you so much to all of our storytellers. Let's give them one more round of applause. So we actually have one more thing for all of you Steve Jobs fans out there. I'm Rebecca. This is Kathy. We are the co-chairs of the development committee, and along with the hard-working committee, we're so grateful that you've attended this. We've worked really hard on it for months, and to Barbara and to all of the storytellers. So thank you. But we actually want to call a couple of special guests up.
Yes, so we have a visitor here from the Office of Children and Family Services, OCFS, and I'd like to now call up Sandra Davidson. She's the Associate Commissioner and New York Regional Director. Want that one, or you want that one, or this one? Pat, would you like to come up?
So in good fashion, the state has come here to audit. The over 40 years, you should be nervous. You should be nervous. But before I start, I do want to say thank you for all the speakers. Your stories touch the soul and touch the heart. And I'm honored to be here with everyone today. Further, in spite of what's happening today, everyone in this room has a responsibility to continue to fight and stand on the shoulders of this man right here. Do not let all the work that all the people that we stand on their shoulder for go nothing, in spite of what's happening today. So I'll get off that horse. Mr. Pat.
Yes.
You are hereby summoned. Yep. The New York State Office of Children and Family Services is pleased to recognize Pat O'Brien for more than 40 years of dedicated public service that has directly impacted the lives of New Yorkers in a positive and meaningful way. Whereas, there's a lot of whereases, so just bear with me. Pat has served New York State's families for nearly 40 years, including working with the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York for the past 9 years, most recently as the coalition's executive director. Whereas, he has been an unwavering advocate on behalf of the children, youth, and families of New York State. And Pat is an adoptive parent and the founder of You Gotta Believe. In 1995, Pat's passion and personal mission, family is the most important thing, having been an integral in changing the landscape of child welfare to include the voice of older youth and foster and adoptive families. And through his numerous endeavors, Pat has been and remains the epitome of walking the walk, as evidenced by his own family's adoptive journey and his tireless community activities and membership on the boards of Voices for Adoptive Foster Families Today, Treehouse Foundation, and the North American Council on Adoptable Children. And we are gathered here today in part to celebrate and honor the life's work of this exceptional individual who has dedicated himself to New York State's children and families and communities involved in the child welfare system, and who has presented in every state in our country and received national recognition, including the Angels in Adoption Award, the Adoption Excellence Award, and the 2014 Child Advocate of the Year. Now, therefore, I, Commissioner, not me, she's much fancier than I am, Dr. Damia Harris Madden, do hereby confer this citation upon Pat O'Brien for his excellence in working to better the lives of New Yorkers. And I thank Pat for his personal commitment to find families and permanency for thousands of children and youth in the state of New York. Congratulations on your service.
Thank you so much. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, I got nothing to say. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
Pat, we're so grateful for you. Thank you again to our storytellers. Silent auction, eat some food, have a chat. Thank you all so much for coming.